days of delicious discussions about direct democracy. Let me jump right into it with what I think is a pretty pertinent question. Do you trust the people? Several years ago, when I first started working with Citizens in Charge, I had lunch with a gentleman who wasn't sure about Initiative Referendum, and we sat down, and we must have sat down for about 3 seconds when he shoots this question out at me: do you trust the people? And I thought about it for a second, and I said, no. But I trust the people a whole lot more than I trust the politicians. It's in this context, as a check on those in power, that I think direct democracy is absolutely indispensable. Let's face it, the power to make laws is a little bit frightening. Things have gone wrong once or twice throughout our history. We come together because we believe in democracy, but we also have to recognize that democracy can be two wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for dinner. The people can be wrong just like the politicians can be wrong, though the people are far less apt to be wolves, I think. And of course, it's harder to bribe the entire electorate than it might be to bribe a legislator or two or three. But my point is that personally, my first political goal is freedom. The rights of everyone to live their lives as they choose, not their right to make laws. And my first political experience as a very young man was not working to pass laws, but standing up in civil disobedience against a law I believe to be unjust and dangerous for our country. At the age of 20, I refused to register for the draft. The consequence was serving for 5.5 months in a federal prison. I have the dubious distinction of serving the longest of anyone post-Vietnam. For me, it was a very big price to pay. Historically, it was an incredibly small price to pay. But it does give me some perspective on the cost of politics going awry, the downside of lawmaking. And it also really encouraged me to find an easier way to check the powers that be. Years later, I discovered the wonder of direct democracy when I began working for term limits. We took the issue to the ballot box all across the country, and we won virtually every time. I believe there were more than 65 statewide initiative votes, virtually all of them that we won. Now, if you talk about term limits without direct democracy, as my old boss in New Yorker used to say, forget about it. I used to open up my talks on term limits by saying, I fear that I'm on the wrong side of an 80-20 issue. I'm with the 80% of Americans who favor term limits. Today, there are no such limits on the U.S. Congress, and there's no such limits in virtually every state that doesn't have the initiative process. Our representatives have basically decided not to represent us on this issue. They put their own self-interest ahead of the public's desire for this change. Now, whether you like term limits or just absolutely despise them is really beside the point. It's just that term limits is not, clearly not, the only issue that politicians, our representatives, have essentially taken a pass on representing us. Whether we're talking about the environment or health care, war and peace, and really whether you're on one side of the issue or the other, there is a strong sense that we are disconnected from those who are supposed to represent us, from the very people we have placed into power. It seems so often that representative government has become a euphemism for unrepresentative government. I think there is no conflict, as is sometimes argued. There's this conflict between representative government and direct democracy. But I disagree, because it seems to me that if you believe in representation, you cannot oppose people representing themselves. No wonder, everywhere, around the world and across this country, people favor initiative and referendum, direct democracy. Citizens in Charge and Citizens in Charge Foundation has just released a 50-state poll. We commissioned a poll in every single one of the 50 states, and the results are both striking and not at all surprising. In every single state, by at least a 2-to-1 margin, the voters favor initiative and referendum. In many states, the margin is 4-to-1, or 5-to-1, or 7-to-1. In South Dakota, it happens to be 9-to-1. But in every single state, people support it. And yet, in the 26 states that don't have an initiative and referendum process, or at least don't have the initiative, the likelihood of our representatives waking up and deciding to end their monopoly on lawmaking and sharing power with the people is somewhere between slim and none. It will take a long, protracted battle to get initiative rights in those states that we don't already have them. But that is precisely the mission of Citizens in Charge. We're the only national organization in the U.S. dedicated to both protecting and expanding the initiative and referendum process. Still, we spend most of our time protecting it, defending against attacks. In recent decades, just as we've seen more use of initiative and referendum, we've also seen a tremendous backlash from the powers that be. Laws restricting who can gather signatures, how you can pay for signatures. Laws that have set supermajorities to pass initiatives, so that in essence, with a minority of the vote, you can win and you can block the majority. This has happened all across the country. There is a very powerful coalition of elected officials, of big business and the Chamber of Commerce, aligned with big labor and the public employees unions, and other special interests that have combined to work to undermine the process of direct democracy. It is the goal of Citizens in Charge to organize our own coalition, a coalition of reformers from left and right, average citizens, folks from clean election advocates to anti-tax advocates, people who believe that if you want government of, by, and for the people, you might actually want to let the people have some say. And really, that is, to me, the most powerful part of initiative and referendum. It's not just winning at the ballot box. The beautiful thing about this process is that sometimes you win even when you lose at the ballot box. This process has a history in which initiatives that have been defeated soundly change the nature of the debate and make major changes over the next 2 and 4 and 6 and 8 and 10 years. I think we have to recognize that one of the important elements of initiative and referendum is found in what John F. Kennedy said: those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable.